Can I have your attention, please? Good afternoon. Can you turn? That's what it is. You turn off your cell phones, please, or mute them, and we can get this program underway. Okay. I am Nick Norcott. I am the chairperson of the Board of Directors, Board of Trustees, whatever you want to call it. If you see in the program, it says Flemming L. Norcott Jr. I'm the same person, but nobody, I mean nobody, calls me Flemming. And if you do, you haven't known me very long. I want to first welcome everyone here who's in attendance, but also those who are doing this virtually or online. We appreciate so much the fact that you've taken your time to come and join us on this very auspicious occasion. It's been, Will tells me, and we were just recalling, it's 3 years ago since we had our last in-person annual meeting. We've had one online, but it's not the same. Being here, I'm sure the clouds can't dampen the joy we all feel in revisiting this really great occasion. It's a celebration because we've come through some very tough times. We've all struggled with various aspects of our lives. The foundation has muddled through and struggled and kept afloat the good work that we do, I think. And we are here again in celebration, as I said, and I hope you all can share in the joy that I personally feel. I want to give thanks to our friends. Muchas gracias a nuestros amigos. Mariachi, Mexico, Antiguo. Muchas gracias, señores. And our friends will be back later during the program, and you will hear much more of their very beautiful music. I want to give my thanks also to my fellow board members, some who are here and present. If they would stand, Valerie Schultz-Wilson, please. Heather Tooks. Fernando Muñiz. And all those who could not make it but are online. I want to give a special thanks to my vice chair, Marcela Nunez-Smith, Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith, and I can tell you, without her supporting me, in board leadership and supporting Will in the role of vice chair and board leadership, we could not accomplish the very difficult tasks that we have in formulating agendas and formulating the work product that we put out on behalf of the community. So thanks to Marcella. I want to also give thanks to any former board members. Could they stand, please? Any former board member? Dave, I see. Kellyanne, I see. Emily, I see. And I want to thank them for their participation too. Their conversations that they've had with me have been invaluable in helping me over these 7 years. which I've spent on this board. This is my last year on the board, my last year as chair, but they have been incredibly helpful to me, as have all the staff and board members and Will himself. I want to give thanks to our donors, our partners, our friends and supporters, who what I call make up the foundation family. Because indeed, I regard it, and I tell the staff and board all the time, I regard this as one big family. I've been a part of a lot of boards and a lot of organizations, but I've never been a part of anything like the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. It is a family, and it is truly a great family that work together. Now, all families have their bumps in the roads, and we have our bumps in the roads too, and sure, you've seen some, or you think you've seen some. But, like all families, we work it out. And like families, if you have suggestions to help us better ourselves, please give them to us, because we're not so bold or brave to think that we have all the answers and can do this by ourselves. Years ago, when I was a much younger man, when I had less gray hair than now, there was a cartoon in the newspaper. Walt Kelly was the cartoonist, and he penned a character called Pogo Possum. Now, some of you who are a little too young won't remember Pogo Possum, but some of you who are nodding your heads do remember. Well, this possum had a great ability to develop and deliver witticisms about the social condition around which he found himself. And one of his famous sayings was this. He said, in observing the social condition, "We have met the enemy, and it is us." Well, with all deference to Pogo and his brilliance, and I think he could be well spot on given the racial, political, and social struggles and divisions that we see in our country today, I think his witticism is inapplicable to the Foundation family and those who support us. We're truly honored to have so many of you here today in support of the work we do on behalf of the Greater New Haven community. Further thanks go to our CEO and President, Will Ginsberg, whom you'll hear from a little bit later, and his talented staff for all the dedicated and tireless work they do on behalf of you all and everyone else who supports us. And I don't want to embarrass them, but if all the staff people could either stand up or raise their hands so people know who you are in the back and whatnot, they are famous for what they do. And again, we could not do it without them. Finally, I want to give thanks to our nonprofit organizations, without whom much of the needed services that they deliver to the community, to those most in need, without them, I don't know where we'd be. The nonprofit community, which we support wholeheartedly, the heartbeat, it seems to me, of this Greater New Haven community, of the state of Connecticut, in fact. And I think we all should give them a big round of applause for all the nonprofits. You'll note from our annual report, and I think you'll get the annual report later, that the theme for today's meeting is our community meeting the moment? Well, the obvious question to me when I read that was, what's the moment? And for us at the Foundation, the moment is one of transformation. It's clear to many of us that this community, this state, this country is undergoing a transformative moment in the history of our great United States. The impact of George Floyd's tragic killing has reverberated far beyond just the criminal justice system. The need for reform in that system merely revisited the existence of ongoing racial injustice throughout this country, injustice that can often be easily ignored. The COVID pandemic further exposed racial and social inequities that collectively we have refused to address in any meaningful fashion. The heavyweight boxer, Mike Tyson, once said of his opponents, "Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face." Well, we all had plans in place when COVID punched the world in the face. But rather than get knocked out by the blow and knocked out for the count, I believe that this community, our community, recognized that a transformative moment had indeed arrived, full of the opportunity to change the status quo and to rework our collective efforts to achieve a better, inclusive, more equitable society. A significant example of this is the impressive level of community giving during the pandemic to the Great Give, levels that we really didn't expect to see, all in support of our nonprofit providers. Our donors, civic, religious, educational, and other important organizations have also recognized the moment and within their respective disciplines have embraced the fact that the old way of doing things will no longer work. The playing field has changed. Diversity, inclusion, and equity are now the new players on the field. I believe that we at the Foundation are at the vanguard of this transformative moment. Here are a few of the highlights, but not all. I'm sure Will get into a lot more in detail, but here are the few that I want to point out. One, our Stepping Forward initiative began to address the impact of COVID and the racial inequities in our community. In partnership with our friends at the United Way, we established a special committee, significantly supported by the Foundation's resources and donor contributions, to fund many basic needs of those most negatively affected by the pandemic. 3, we are in the process of creating a more equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem for women and people of color. We are committed to the proposition that small business growth in the New Haven region needs to be more equitable and inclusive. 4, we are redesigning and streamlining our process of grant making so that the funds get to our providers more effectively. Finally, we are continuing our efforts to bring more diverse voices to the decision-making tables in our community. The answer to the meeting the moment question is a difficult one, and it well may lead to a totally self-serving response. But I believe that we all should feel proud to say that yes, we are truly giving our best effort to meet the moment. History, of course, will be the final determiner of whether we've succeeded in this effort at all. Please stay the course of commitment to reform, to a better community. Please continue to give to the Great Give that's upcoming in a few moments. Please stay together as family, as many divisions try to rip us apart. I'm going to ask Will Ginsberg now to come, and he'll correct anything that I've said wrong. So thank you very much.
Glasses. Well, thank you, Nick. No corrections. Even if there were any, I wouldn't make them, but there are no corrections. Nick, that was really great, and what a great chair you are. What a great leader for the foundation you are. What a great leader for this community you've been for such a long time. So thank you. And good afternoon to you all. Thanks so much for joining us today for the Foundation's annual meeting. Our first, as Nick said, our first in-person annual meeting since 2019. I'm so delighted to be with you and to see you. Many dear friends, longtime friends, seeing for the first time face-to-face in more than 2 years. And I'm equally delighted knowing that many good friends are joining us remotely. So I extend a warm welcome to you all. Being with you has put a smile on my face this afternoon, and now that I've taken my mask off, you can actually see that. I thank you for being masked, too. It's one of the things we can do to keep our community safer. I also want to say a special thank you, although I'll do it in English, to Mariachi, Mexico, Antiguo for that wonderful opening music, and we will hear from them after the program. And thank you again, Nick. So today we celebrate our togetherness, both in person and electronically. 26 months and counting into this terrible pandemic, our connections to one another and to all that we hold dear in this community are proving strong enough to overcome our separation. Our very being as a community has been tested these past 2 years. Yet here we are, together again, and working together as always, to build the community of opportunity and equity that we all want to see. I say that today with heartfelt gratitude for the commitment and generosity of so many people in our community. We are truly all leaning on each other. For the foundation, our gratitude starts with you all. You are our inner circle. You are our fellow travelers in the work of community. Your names and the names of your institutions are those inscribed with gratitude in the donor and grantee listings in our new annual report that you'll receive on your way out this evening, and please pick one up. We are proud and honored to be associated with all you do and all you give. I can't thank you enough. Nearly 2 years ago, in early June of 2020, we were in the depths of COVID, and violence was erupting across the country following the murder of George Floyd. It was a time of unprecedented isolation, fear, loss, uncertainty, inequity, and injustice. Yet even at that dark moment, the Foundation's annual message to our community was one of confidence. And that confidence has proven to be well-founded. We have much to be proud of in the ways in which our community has responded to the urgent needs of this crisis time. Over these last 2 years, so many in our community have shown the courage, the personal courage, and the generosity that have enabled us to care for the sick and needy among us. And beyond that, we have also much to be proud of in the ways that the crisis of COVID has proven to be a departure point for reimagining the future of Greater New Haven. As Nick said, we are putting our commitment to greater equity at the center of our common vision of what we can be post-COVID. And we've taken big forward steps to build an even stronger post-COVID economy for the future. Equity and opportunity. So we're not just still here. We're passing the historic test of COVID and we're moving forward. A year ago, last year, I entitled my annual meeting remarks, "A Time of Transformation?" This year, I've dropped the question mark. These remarks are entitled, "A Time of Transformation, period." Transformation is demanded of us. In revealing the deep structural inequities in our most fundamental social and economic systems, COVID's lesson is that progress means doing things very differently. Many have said this. Many have made commitments. The question for 2022 is whether these commitments will be realized. The question for all of us is whether our community is truly meeting the moment. 2 years on, like Nick Norcott, I believe we are. From where we sit at the Foundation, we see real fundamental change. A new and much more diverse generation of leaders, some established, some just emerging, are offering bold new ideas and new ways of thinking about our challenges and our opportunities. These changes are just beginning. They're at an early stage. Meaningful change is always difficult, uneven, and fitful. There can be pushback. Certainly, we are seeing ugly and divisive reaction at the national level. In 2022, the challenge before us as a community is to recognize the transformation that is beginning to take shape around and among us, to embrace it, and to build on it for the future. Our new annual report says this right up front, right on the inside of the cover. Quote, "This can be a time of transformation. Whether we make it so here in Greater New Haven will determine much about the future of our community." In other words, the stakes are high, and this is the moment. The Foundation is doing all we can to meet this challenge. We are committed to utilizing the community's charitable resources as a force for transformation. And the Foundation is in a strong position to do so. Stepping forward, our 3-year, $26 million initiative to respond to COVID and advance racial equity launched in 2021. It provides us with the resources to transform our work even as we continue and expand our legacy roles. It is funded by an unprecedented supplemental extraction from our discretionary endowments and by the very generous support of our donors. Due to stepping forward, in 2021, the amount of foundation discretionary community spending was the highest of any year in our history. Your annual report describes 3 areas in which we see this real fundamental change taking shape. Allow me to summarize. First, cultural equity. Look at what's happening in our community. With new leaders in place, our community's cornerstone arts institutions are more than ever about showcasing and connecting with the wide diversity of our cultural traditions. City government in New Haven has a new blueprint for our cultural future that proclaims, quote, "Art is necessary, most of all, as a conduit to propel us toward diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice," close quote. And extraordinary young studio artists from around the world are coming to Henry Street in Dixwell, in the Dixwell neighborhood, to learn, to connect, and to develop their talents. Our community's arts and cultural treasures have long been a point of great pride. That's not new, often cited for and touted for their economic impact. Today, the focus is on how the arts can promote cross-cultural understanding to build a stronger community. Today, the focus is on cultural equity. The foundation is very much in the midst of this shift. One example is our new grant program, REACH, launched this past year. REACH stands for Racial Equity and Creative Healing Through the Arts. Developed in partnership with the Arts Council, REACH is providing more than $500,000 in 2-year support to 17 artists of color and arts organizations to create cultural experience centered on racial justice, collective healing, and youth development. 4 of our REACH grantees are highlighted in the annual report. Second, change makers. Again, look what's happening in our community. A new generation of social sector leaders are bringing diverse perspectives and different life experiences to the work of community. Community organizing is increasingly central to the work of the sector. One example we cite in our annual report is the New Haven High School students who were leaders in the work to make Connecticut the first state to enact legislation requiring the teaching of African American and Latinx studies. So today, a new narrative is beginning to be written about what we aspire to be as a community and how we can achieve it. And the foundation is very much in the midst of this transformation, too. Building on the long-term success of our nonprofit capacity building work, we have provided racial equity workshops and trainings to staff and board members from more than 90 local nonprofit organizations this past year. Building on the long-term success of our neighborhood leadership program, in 2021, we launched a new nonprofit management program for emerging leaders of color in the local social sector with grants totaling more than $350,000. The initial cohort of 10 extraordinary individuals is a showcase for the bright future of community building efforts here in our community. And third, inclusive growth. Again, look what's happening in our community today. New Haven Promise scholars are returning here with college degrees and community commitment, and they're finding opportunities to build their lives here. Mega-scale bioscience projects are approved unanimously by the Board of Alders and are or soon will be under construction. Entrepreneurship and innovation are increasingly driving local growth strategies, with a new ecosystem of support taking shape from the actions of large institutions like Yale University and Grameen America and small local grassroots players as well. The Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce has full-time staff devoted to promoting inclusive growth. And Yale University and the City of New Haven have committed to launch a new Center for Inclusive Growth as a centerpiece of their new community partnership. So today, inclusive growth is beginning to replace economic development on the short list of our community's major priorities. And the foundation is also in the middle of this transformation. Our decade of leadership support for New Haven Promise and Concat Concorp is bearing fruit as those organizations reshape how our community thinks about economic goals. For the first time this year, we're doing dedicated grant making to support programs that prepare residents from historically underserved communities for jobs in local growth sectors. And through our mission investment subsidiary, we are investing in small businesses owned by women and people of color and working to make sure that the local ecosystem of entrepreneurial support provides equitable opportunity for them. Now, to be a force for transformation in these ways requires fundamental change within the foundation, too. This is a time of transformation for us as it is for our community. The foundation is centering racial equity across all of our work. We're advancing economic as well as social solutions to our community's challenges. We're engaging community residents more broadly and deeply, listening in new ways to the people closest to the issues we seek to address, and empowering them with the authority and the resources to act on their ideas. And we're building a staff culture rooted in inclusion and innovation so that we can respond nimbly to the rapidly changing dynamics in our community. Again, the annual report provides many examples of all these aspects of our work. Even as we transform, we honor and build on the Foundation's proud 94-year legacy, a legacy defined by our connections and our relationships. At its core, the Foundation is thousands of trusting relationships. Many are multi-generational. Picture not a hub and spoke, but rather an overlapping web of relationships of people and families and nonprofit organizations working over the generations, both with and through the Foundation, to build a stronger community in Greater New Haven. Those relationships have translated today into $870 million in assets dedicated to our community, including we received in 2021 the largest gift in our history. Most importantly, those relationships are our beating heart. They are our institutional life force, if you will. They are why we can legitimately call ourselves the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. This web of relationships gets bigger and stronger every year, but we know that it is still not as big or deep or diverse as it needs to be. For the Foundation to be able to play our role in the future, broadening, deepening, and diversifying our web of relationships must be at the heart of our transformation today. Indeed, building new relationships is the task before all of us. That's the only way to transcend our long-standing divides. Inclusive growth will only take root in the soil of Greater New Haven if the business and nonprofit sectors come together in new ways to create one shared agenda. Cultural equity will only become reality here if the arts community and its patrons embrace new artistic expression and diverse cultural traditions. Truthfully, our community will only achieve its full potential when those in leadership invite in a new generation of change makers with different experiences and different perspectives. This is what meeting the moment demands of each of us as we go forward from here. Now, this path forward will not always be a smooth or easy one, for the work of community can be as much about facing what divides us as it is about strengthening what unites us. As is abundantly clear on the national stage today, one of the primary things that divides us is our failure as a society to fully face our racial history. In the fall of 2016, at the dedication of the National Museum of African American History and Culture on the National Mall in Washington, President Obama spoke of how a common understanding of the past is central to building a brighter future. He said, quote, "A clear-eyed view of history can make us uncomfortable and shake us out of familiar narratives, but it is precisely because of that discomfort that we learn and grow and harness our collective power," close quote. Philanthropy is trying and struggling to face its own racial history. Philanthropy is rooted in the history of how wealth has been amassed and preserved over time, and racial wealth inequity is one of the deepest divides in our society and in our community. Like foundations all over the country, the Community Foundation here is both a powerful force for good and a reflection of society's systemic racial disparities in wealth and in power. The Foundation's vision statement speaks to Greater New Haven as a place where all people share a sense of common destiny. As President Obama suggested, building a sense of common destiny requires facing our past in a clear-eyed and forthright way. Going forward, the Foundation's work will reflect our belief that the local history of wealth and race can, if faced forthrightly, become a cohesive rather than a divisive force for our community. The Foundation's work on these matters is still very much in the formative stage. I look forward to saying more about this in the months ahead. Now, none of what I've said in the last 15 minutes or so about change and transformation would be remotely possible without both the powerful leadership of our deeply committed directors and the great and dedicated work of our passionately committed staff. One could not ask for more in a board of directors. To a person, they are deeply supportive, even while probing and pushing and challenging conventional thinking as to what will make our community better. They have faced the challenges of these last 2 years unflinchingly. Think differently, they've said. Do more, they've demanded. Break the mold, they've urged. Or as Nick Norcott put it with a nod to the late John Lewis, it's time to stir up some good trouble. So while special thanks go to Nick and to our wonderfully wise Vice Chair, Marcella Nunez-Smith, as Nick said, I am so grateful to each and every one of my board members. My deepest heartfelt thanks to Nick and Marcella, to Maisa Akbar, to Heather Tukes Alexopoulos, to Keith Churchwell, to Roxanne Cody, Joe Gordon, Terry Jones, Fernando Muniz, Greg Pepe, and Valerie Schultz-Wilson. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, institutional transformation doesn't happen overnight or even over 2 years. The seeds are planted over time. Having been doing this work for more than 2 decades now, I can see how seeds of change planted many years ago by former directors are shaping what we can do today. So I'm also grateful to so many of our past board members, several of whom are here, for their wisdom and their prescience in positioning the Foundation for these rapidly changing times. The work you did, the insights you brought to 70 Audubon Street, and the changes you championed while with us still reverberate in our work. Now, there are many stories tied up in the challenges and accomplishments of the last 2 years at the Foundation. There are stories of gifts received and grants made, stories of longstanding relationships sustained and new relationships built, stories of service, of finding new ways to support the community, stories of innovation, new programs launched, new partnerships undertaken, new ideas embraced, new learning welcomed, and old processes improved. There are stories of facing a rapidly changing world, changing values, volatile markets, new governmental roles. And behind the scenes, there are stories of support for colleagues struggling with the personal challenges of COVID or with even more profound losses in their lives. The people behind these stories are the 45 dedicated professionals who I am proud to call my Foundation colleagues. I've been proud of our staff for every day of the 21 years that I've been privileged to work with and learn from these fine people. I've never been more inspired or proud than I am today after these last 2 years, and I thank them all. Now, before we turn to the Great Give, which starts on Wednesday, I will leave you with one concluding thought. In 2022, as always, the work of community is rooted in connection, in generosity, and in long-term commitment. You all, above all, know that, for you all are the keepers of that flame. But today, the work of community demands transformation too. Building the community of opportunity and equity requires that we all think about and do the work of community differently. We thank you so much as we continue down this path together. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, for all I've said this afternoon, the work of community also just comes down to reaching into our pockets to support the wonderful nonprofits in our community. These organizations truly do the frontline work of community. They deserve the community support, as you all know. They need the community support, as you all know. Giving is great at any time, but there is a special moment each year that is the greatest time to give. This is another way of meeting the moment. And Wednesday and Thursday of this week is that moment. It's the Great Give 2022. Now, we have a great staff team that works together to make the Great Give the vitally important event that it is. The team is led by Jackie Downing, our Director of Grantmaking and Nonprofit Support. So now, less than 40 hours from the opening bell, it is my pleasure to turn this program over to Jackie to urge you and hassle you about the Great Give 2022.
And that is what I do so well. Good afternoon. Thank you, Will. This is a time of transformation, and our nonprofit community has been rising up and meeting this moment in time and in society in every aspect of their work. In capacity building world of our nonprofits, we use the term pivot a lot. Organizations have pivoted in the way they are presenting their programs and services, pivoted to be safe, to step up to meet the increasing needs of our community, and to transform their organizations and their work to be more reflective of the community we share, more inclusive, and more equitable. Honestly, they may not have always done a business plan and a cost analysis of these changes. They responded in the moment and took prudent but decisive actions and made change. Now, with the Great Give, we have the opportunity to recognize the risks they've taken, the service they provided, and the leadership they've shown in pivoting to new ways of doing business. Without hesitation, our nonprofits provided services when our friends and neighbors couldn't pay. They entertained us online at no charge when we couldn't go to the theaters. They kept our kids learning and sharing when we couldn't pay for them to go to community centers. They provided for the basic need of food and people who found themselves food insecure for the first time, and delivered to the elderly who couldn't gather in group settings for meals. The Great Give is our chance to step up and say thanks. Giving is open now, but the big event kicks off May 4th, Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., and you have 36 hours to support all of the organizations that you can. We have more than 500. I wrote this at 500. We now have 508. We have 508 local nonprofits, and as they clear their banking, we may have a few more in the Great Give. But these are 500 employers. These are 500 service providers, 500 local groups of our friends and neighbors we rely on every day. I know you probably feel like you've gotten 500 emails, so I'm going to ask you to excuse the volume. This is just the nonprofits doing their job. We give them the platform, but they must do the outreach. I hope you'll respond to each and every one. The minimum gift is $5. Give generously to your favorites, but then please find a few new organizations and send the support you can. And I promise, on May 5th, the emails will stop at 8 p.m. Along with more organizations than ever, we have more prizes and matches. $268,500 in matching and cash prizes. Our generous sponsors each direct their matches to different service sectors. So in addition to the match money from the Community Foundation and the Valley Community Foundation, many organizations have other sponsored matches. For instance, Griswold Home Care matches elderly service organizations. The Black Futures Fund will match Black-led organizations. Progreso Latino Fund will match Latinx-led organizations. And new this year is the Bank of America Raise the Curtain Power Hour for the Arts. On Wednesday night between 8 and 9, the Bank of America will provide matches for donors who give to any arts organization, visual or performing arts. And during that hour, the arts organizations are giving you a thank you. They're showcasing their work online with links to shows, concerts, and gallery tours. So come, be entertained, and then give. We also welcome this year new prizes, a new prize from the Madison Foundation. They joined Branford and Guilford Foundation, and prizes that are awarded based on hometown donors. So if you live in Madison, Guilford, or Branford, please give to your hometown organizations and give to your favorites. So more prizes and matches than ever, but it takes donors to earn them. And that's where you come in. Go to thegreatgive.org tomorrow, today, May 4th and 5th, and give. This afternoon, I'm drawing 3 winners. Each will get 2 $100 gift cards to use in the Great Give. We ask that the winners use one to give to their favorite organization and one to make a gift to a new organization. So I'm going to do that drawing now, and then I'll tell you who the winners are. This is my pal Gigi. Gigi is our mascot. She's an acorn, a small thing that makes big thing grow. $5 donations come together. We had 15,000 donors that did almost $3.5 million last year. It doesn't work with a lot of people. So Gigi will make us grow. If they tear that extra lottery scratch ticket off, you have to buy it. So I have my 3 winners. I have Michael Mims, Carolyn Vermont, and Patrice Farquharson. So I will email these 3 folks. I know Patrice is here. I saw her when she came in. I will email these folks, and we'll talk about how we can connect and get your winners named so that they can get their contributions. Now, a final thank you to those who attended online. We appreciate you being with us. Your streaming will end after the first song that we have after the performance. So I bid you adieu, stay safe, and have a lovely evening. For those of us here at the Carousel, I invite you to pick up a nosh box and to enjoy here or take it home. The Carousel will also be open for riding. Don't miss the chance to ride this historic work of art. Oh, come on, grown-ups, you can do it. On the way out, we'll have a copy of our annual report for you, and for those of you who are online, it will be available electronically as well. Yeah, we're not liable. Yeah, it's on your own risk. Ride the Carousel at your own risk. Earlier, you enjoyed Saul Olivas and Jose Robles from the Mariachi Mexico Antiguo. Please welcome them back with fellow artists Rodbel Birula, Vicente Gomez, Andrea Cabrera, and David Cervantes. On behalf of the Community Foundation, thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant evening. See you in the Great Give.